Okay. Good evening once more. Today we are having our second lecture of Alumni Scientific Interactives, and it is a pleasure to have alumni of this college, even though not of the department. Kosta belonged to the Department of Biochemistry. Is one of the first batch, I guess, of the department, the first or the second batch of Department of Biochemistry, and it is a pleasure to have him as our alumni to speak today. So he will be talking on intrinsically disordered proteins. And to give a very brief introduction about Kostop, Kostop graduated in 2012 from the Department of Biochemistry and did his post-graduation in molecular biology and biotech from Kalyani University, West Bengal. He then further gained pre-doctoral research experiences from two labs, one at the Kharagpur IIT under Dr. Ognyo Ganguly and the other from Bose Institute under Professor Shimonti Shorka. Kostop qualified NET almost 3 times and finally joined ISAR Kolkata in 2016 under the mentorship of Dr. Rahul Das, where he started working on his doctoral work under understanding the role of zeta associated protein kinase 70 tandem SH2 domain dynamics in T cell signaling. In this short span of his career, he has presented his work in 5 national and international scientific meet and has few scientific publications, noteworthy being the one of his publication in the FASEB journal. Among the awards achieved, he has been awarded for being the topper in BSc in Biochemistry from the Teachers Council, Vivekananda College. He has received the Best Poster Award in Advances in Life Science in 2017, the Best Poster Award in Indian Biophysical Society Conference 2019. And the last word, he has this extreme passion for photography, and that is a quote from his biodata. So it's quoting Kostop that I am an amateur photographer interested in documenting human interest and daily life. So that is his passion and love, I guess. So now over to Kostop. Kostop, I'm stopping my presentation so that you can go ahead with presenting your slide. Give me one moment. So Kostop, I have stopped presentation.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction. Specifically, I'm doing my PhD in ISAR Kolkata, and this is my last year. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk here. And I will be talking on a very interesting kind of proteins, that is intrinsically disordered proteins. Being in the field of structural biology, this is quite interesting to know that how the protein works, because the exceptions are quite interesting in the field. So we will be specifically looking into how these proteins are breaking the rules of protein chemistry and folding in recent times. So this is the overall thing we will be going to know from my talk, and let's see how can we finish it out. So as a prelude, as we were taught in our class 12 or maybe in class 10, and also in some cases in the graduation, that proteins are folded molecules and are like globular structures. They can stay in only 2 states, that is the apostate and the bound state, and they act like a lock and key model. They can bind. They have 2 structures. One is that the open one, and they can bind to someone. That is the lock model, and that is the lock and key thing that is being told about the protein. But the interesting fact is, this is a very old concept about protein biology, and there is a lot of change after that. So proteins are the strings of amino acid. We can say that we know that there are 20 amino acids in nature, and 9 of them are essential, and the other 11 we can synthesize in our body. And these proteins, these amino acids make the strings, and after that the protein can fold upon himself, or maybe with some another similar protein, so that they can form a dimer and they can form some structure. So why does a protein need to make a structure? As we know that the protein is proteins are formed by different bonds. Specifically, there are some partial double bond characters in protein, and this gives the protein a steric hindrance, so the protein cannot go into any structure of its of whatever it wants. And further, the protein also have all the amino acids. Also, some of the amino acids also have some hydrophobic long chains or some big groups in its side chains. So this eventually make the protein to fold in a single way than the others. So before going into details, one of the striking work that was being done in India, that is by G.N. Ramachandran. He came up with since there are dihedral angles and the protein cannot move in any way in any of in like any way it wants. So he came up with the idea that the protein can form alpha helix or the beta sheets, and these alpha helix and the beta sheets have a specific dihedral angles, specific phi and psi values, which nominated them to be a alpha helical one or a beta sheet one. So coming into more details, the proteins that we read are specifically either a alpha helical structure like the left one, or maybe the beta sheet one, anti-parallel one or the parallel one. So these are the basic things we know about protein structure. So what happens after that? You have now the protein is made from the RNA and it folds and makes a secondary structure. After that, as we know that the protein goes on a further folding, maybe by the help of the chaperones, maybe by on itself forming the hydrophobic core, and this entire folding make the 3D structure of the entire protein. And this 3D structure is formed by the hydrophobic core inside, and whereas the hydrophilic amino acid stays outside in the layer, so that they can interact with the solution. So, and this the 3D structure of the protein does whatever function it is meant to meet. So now what we have known, that we have a primary structure that is the strings of amino acids that were in different combinations, and then they move into formation of the secondary structure, that is alpha helical structure or beta sheet one, and then this again restructure to form a globular or some tertiary structure that gives the 3D structure of the entire protein. So the question is, what if this protein doesn't fold, or what if this hydrophobic amino acids are not present in the protein? So now we know the structure domains where the protein, the sequence form a structure and then its function. But if the sequence doesn't form the structure, it remains a disordered one. Will it function? So the question was here in the very beginning. So coming to the discovery, this is a very good story actually, and Peter Wright is one of the renowned researcher and one of the pioneer of intrinsically disordered proteins. One of the students was Richard Krivosky, and Jane Dyson happened to be the collaborator of Peter Wright. Eventually, while Richard was working in Peter's lab, he was getting some while working on the structure of some protein, he found that there are some unstructured part in the protein, or he is getting some data which is not what it meant to be, or rather you can say that he was not getting a structure of the data, structure of some protein. So Peter just like any other guy told Richard that okay, I think you are getting something wrong and maybe this is an artifact. But while Richard repeated the data, and eventually he found that this structure, that he is not getting the structure, and this entirely different kind of disordered kind of thing is coming up in his data in every now and then. And he was working on P21 protein, which happens to be an inhibitor for cyclin CDK1, CDK2, and CDK4/6. So Peter while working with Jane Dyson, came up with the idea that this might be something very different than what is known, or what it is called the classical protein chemistry. And the first paper of intrinsically disordered protein came up in PNAS, and it says that he have got some structural disorder thing in P21 protein. which might be essential for the binding with the CDK1, CDK2, CDK4, or 6. So eventually, some 1200 kilometer away, another person, A. Keith Dunker, was happening to attend a presentation of a student in Washington State University. And that guy was presenting uh, about a structure of calcineurin, one of the calcium modulin dependent serine protein kinase that is essential for calcium dependent signaling, and especially in T cells. So why he was explaining that he is facing difficulty while making the structure of this calcineurin protein, and eventually Dunker had already seen this type of difficulties, which was explained by that student earlier, and he came up with the idea that this might be that open gate which have entirely changed the field he was working earlier. So after that, he moved to the intrinsically disordered protein. He just went out and looked into the entire genome and find out intrinsically disordered protein and started working on them. So now you have the intrinsically disordered proteins. The first one that was discovered was by Karash in 1951. That is bovine serum albumin. First binding sites. Those binding sites are kind of intrinsically disordered, and it has been observed that this disordered protein play a lot of function, from interaction to regulation and in many ways. But why these proteins are important is not known, and it has been seen that the eukaryotic proteome have 35 to 50% of these intrinsically disordered proteins. So eventually, Hosoda came up in 2011 with the statistical data that he found by computational analysis that the more the complexity of the organism, there is the higher rate of disorder of the protein is observed in the proteome. But eventually, the question is, why not before 1990 brought those data were invented? Actually, the problem was that there is a rapid rise of the genome data. As you know, that there are human genome projects and other human genome projects that have came up in the last 20 to 30 years, and eventually, if they luckily have got some kind of data like that or some kind of protein like that they were working, but the data was few as artifacts eventually. So now the intrinsically disordered proteins, we can divide them into two parts. One is the protein that are totally intrinsically disordered, as you can see in the middle figure, and the other one is some part of the protein is intrinsically disordered, means they can move in any direction, and you can't make a crystal structure of this part like this protein. But eventually, when this hello.
Yeah, I can hear you, but your presentation is coming. Fine.
Thank you.
I think so. We can continue with the last slide, which we are doing.
No, I can start from here, actually.
Yeah. This was it.
So sorry for the sorry for my bad connection. Actually, as I was discussing, that proteins are actually strings of amino acids, and there are 20 amino acids inside the cell, and these 20 amino acids are permuted or combined to form different proteins, and these primary structures are formed by a strings of amino acids. Then they fold upon themselves to form the secondary structure, and they again restructure themselves to form the tertiary one. That is the 3D structure. That is the main structure of the protein. So what happens if the protein doesn't fold at all, or what happens if it doesn't attain any structure? So we know that the structured proteins means that you have a sequence, it forms a structure, it functions. But what happens if the sequence doesn't form the structure? Will it function? So to answer that, let's look into some story. Actually, Peter Wright was one of the biochemists. He was one of his students was Richard Krivosky, and Richard was working in Peter's lab in 1995-96. Jane Dyson happened to be the collaborator of Peter Wright, and eventually Richard one day came to Peter and Jane and told them that he is unable to structure the P21 protein, which is an inhibitor of cyclin CDK1, CDK2, and CDK4 and 6. So the question is, why was it not getting structured? actually why they can form a cryo structure of some part of the P21 protein. Peter told Richard that I think you are getting something really wrong, and I think you should check your work again. I think this is an artifact. But eventually the data got repeated, and not once, or also it got repeated for thrice and four times, and then Peter and Jane come to a conclusion that they are looking into something very different that has never been reported earlier. So they reported the first paper on intrinsically disordered protein in 1996 in PNAS that came up on P21. So during the same time, A. Keith Junker, one of the biochemists, was at Washington State University, and uh, having a was in a seminar of some student, and the student was explaining that he is facing some difficulty while making the X-ray crystallographic structure of calcineurin. Calcineurin is a calcium modular in dependent serine threonine for protein phosphatase, and is highly essential for calcium dependent signal transduction pathways. So Keith Junker has some ideas about the problem, because he also had this kind of problem in his PhDs and postdocs. But although he had left out all those data, as he thought that protein should have folded, and whatever he is seeing is completely wrong. So this opened the gate for the intrinsically disordered proteins, and so coming into the details, right now the intrinsically disordered proteins can can regulate, can feature in some part of your protein, can do a lot of function inside the cell, which happens to be known to be done by some structured proteins earlier. So the first protein that was reported to have some this kind of disordered regions was bovine serum albumin in 1951, but not much was reported after that. Since after 1990, there is a rapid rise of genome data. As we all know, that Human Genome Project and other genome projects got into vicinity, and eventually there is an increase in the percentage of intrinsically disordered proteins in the eukaryotic proteome. So it has been reported by Hosoda that the more the complexity of the organism, the more the percentage of disorder in the protein has been found. So the question is, what happened? Why this kind of proteins were not reported before 1990? Eventually, the only way to report a protein before 1990 was to crystallize the protein, and eventually it was not possible to crystallize these proteins since they move very fast, and hence these data were all thrown away. So intrinsically disordered proteins are specifically of two types. Either the entire protein can be intrinsically disordered, or you can have some part of your protein that is intrinsically disordered. So as you can see in the figure, in these two figures. So it has been found that when the intrinsically disordered proteins bind to some structured protein, or these intrinsically disordered protein regions of some structured protein bind to another structured protein, these proteins truly take them some structure, and this is the only time you can make a crystal structure of this protein, this kind of proteins. So the question is, why don't these proteins get aggregated? As we have studied in our cell biology classes, that anything, if doesn't get folded or get misfolded, just the proteasomal proteins come up, they just put some tags on them, and the protein is shifted to the proteasome, they just chop it and do all those stuff. So the same question was asked by Madan Babu. He is working in MRC lab in London, and the lab came up with some to answer the question, they came up with the proteome of the yeast, and the proteome of yeast contains 60702 proteins, and they found that 1971 proteins among them are highly structured. Some of the proteins, like 2711 proteins, have some disordered regions, and finally 2020 proteins are totally unstructured. So how the cell regulates the protein is the major question in those days. Eventually they look into the protein abundance to that of the protein degradation. As you can see in the figure that, you can see in the figure that percentage of protein, structured protein that is present in the cell is quite higher than that of the unstructured protein, whereas the degradation of the unstructured protein is quite high than that of the structured protein. From here, we can say that the cell control the synthesis of this kind of proteins and degrade those proteins very fast, so that these proteins doesn't stay in the cell for a long time. So what will happen if this kind of cells, if this kind of proteins stay for a long time? They will eventually deregulate all the signaling they works on, and this can lead to some disease states like cancer or Alzheimer's. So what are the function of these proteins? So these proteins are like unstructured, they will be fluid, they can move in any direction. So how can they function? Eventually these proteins are, the best part of anything that is fluid is they can move to some place and can come back very early, right? So what this kind of protein does is they can work as chaperones, because they can bind to some protein and can open up very quickly, saving the energy for the cell. Otherwise, synthesizing any protein like that, like a chain, and keeping it inside the cell takes a lot of energy. But in this case, since this kind of proteins eventually save the energy while binding with another protein or in the signaling, henceforth this kind of proteins play a major role to work as a chaperone, to assemble, to regulate some signaling and whatsoever. So now you have a protein sequence. So how do you will know that your protein is a intrinsically disordered protein? So to answer that, I have a very clear idea. I am explaining about let's say you take a string, and you now you take couple of strings, and in one string you just put up some some big stones in 4 different places, and in the other one you don't keep keep those stones, you just keep the string as it is. And now after that you just leave the string with the stones down, and you will find that it can take a globular structure, or it will take some structure where the stones will be inside and the strings will be outside. But when you take a string without those stones and leave it out, it can take any form whatsoever. It may have some core, it may not have also some core. So couple of examples for them. KIX is a well-known structured protein, which I will explain later, and MLL is an unstructured protein. So now I will be showing you a video, I think. So this is how a unstructured protein looks like. This is the NMR structure of the protein. Since you can make a crystal, and in most cases you can't make anything out of this kind of proteins, because you can't make a cryo-TEM or anything out of these proteins, because they are highly fluidic and you can't make a proper crystal out of that. So this is a structure of cGMP phosphodiesterase, and this protein is essential for the vasodilation effect of cGMP in the corpus callosum. So let's take an example to understand this structural functional studies, and I will be explaining something from my work. So as I'm taking T cell signaling as an example, and I hope that T cell signaling is I think you guys have some idea of the T cell signaling. T cell signaling is a major part that have a major role in adaptive immunity. As you know, the antigen present in cell come up with the peptide, present it to the TCR, and the intercellular part of the TCR get phosphorylated. This intercellular part upon phosphorylation, a protein ZAP70 come up and binds to it, and this open up the entire cascade of signaling in the T cell. So, and this signalings, and after that the T cell can function as it is. So in this case, I will be explaining about 2 proteins. One is the ZAP70, which is an entirely structured protein, and the other is that CD3, that is cytosolic domain of the T cell. As you can see in this figure, this is the open state of the ZAP70 protein. Whereas when this protein, this CD3 zeta, binds to the ZAP70, it takes a closed structure. But eventually, if you look into this protein, the upper one, you will find that it doesn't take any structure at all, and this protein is quite unstructured. So this is the entire figure. The protein, the ZAP70 comes to it, it binds to this doubly phosphorylated unstructured protein, and henceforth the entire signaling gets started. So while I was looking into this in intracellular part of the T cell receptor, I found that it have three item motifs. Item are these regions which are conserved from for generations, like from eukaryotes to prokaryotes to whatsoever, and they play a significant role. Means they play a single role in any cell it is present. So in this figure, the green boxes, as you can see, are the unstructured part of the protein, and the red parts form some kind of helixes, and the other parts are totally unstructured. And this item 1, 2, 3 have 6 phosphorylation binding, 6 tyrosines, and these tyrosines are phosphorylated, which meant to be the binding site for ZAP70. So while I was looking into this figure, I came up with a software called Disopret. I took the structure of the protein. I took the sequence of the protein and and just submitted it there, and it showed that while it is not phosphorylated, the blue line is for the non-phosphorylated one, and the yellow line is for the phosphorylated one. And this line in between at 0.5 shows that what is the percentage of disorderedness in the protein. So anything above 0.5 is disordered, anything under 0.5 is structured. So as you can see in the protein, it is a highly unstructured protein, and this is playing a vital role for the initiation of T cell signaling for any immunological cells, for any immunological system. So this is what it is. So now you have a intrinsically disordered protein, which when get phosphorylated, a structured protein come up, it binds to it and start the entire signaling. So from here we came to that the role of disorder is fast. It have some what it does. It can bind transiently to different proteins and can make the signaling super fast. It can make different complexes, can auto-inhibit something, can regulate the signaling, and it can have some post-translational modification. It can works as a chaperone. So this is the entire work. Now we will keep coming up. We will summing up our work with 2 proteins. PKID, it is an intrinsically disordered protein playing a major role in transcription regulation, and the other is the KIX domain, which is present in the PKID protein. This PKID protein have the only work to activate this. This KIX domain is the binding site for the PKID protein, and this protein helps in this PKID plays a major role in transcription after binding to this KIX. So let's look into this video. So this is the KIX domain of the CREB protein. As you can see, it is highly structured, and this is the protein that is the unstructured one, that is the KIX molecule. And have a complete look into it. Now they will run a dynamic simulation, and you will see that this protein, this red color protein, which is the PKID, is here, and these molecules are fluctuating so fast because they are unstructured, while the structured protein is in its flow in a single state. It's more or less having a very little move from the apo to the bound state, as was discussed in the classical protein chemistry. So from here we can say that this being flexible is highly essential for many signaling to work on, and these proteins being a very flexible plays this major role. So I thank the Department of Zoology for giving me the chance, giving me the opportunity to talk here, and thanks to all the students to bearing the talk. I think I can give you a clear idea that how this protein works, and I just want to give this photograph because this is a place which have all the stories that I have with me till date from the college, and thank you.
Also, thank you. That was a very crisp way of explaining protein structure, and you have touched the TCR signaling part also. Shomita, are you there? Are there any questions in the
Yes,
chat
ma'am.
box?
Yes, ma'am. There is one question from Ranjit Shaw. Can I say?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, good evening, sir. It was indeed a very nice lecture. We have a question from Ranjit. He has asked that in Alzheimer's disease, there is an accumulation of amyloid and tau proteins in brain cells. So, is there any therapy to correct it? Hello?
Yeah, uh, this is a this is a good question. Actually, there are a lot of works going on. Specifically, I was just looking into how this protein, how they are working with these proteins. Recently, there is a work that is going on in Papu lab. I forgot the place where this lab is. Uh, Actually, they are specifically working on a phase transition procedure. In this phase transition procedure, they are looking into how this protein are working as a scaffold. Actually, this how these IDPs are working as a scaffold, and this if you ask me that how you want to cover how you want to clear this IDPs, I think the best way out is maybe using some drugs that are very specific for binding to these IDPs. But till date, there are no such thing that is reported yet about these IDPs. As to the best of my knowledge, I am not clear.
Okay. Thank you, sir. There is another question from Ashmit Banerjee. He
Okay.
has asked that what is the name of the bioinformatics software used over here?
Oh, okay. I have used couple of software here. Sorry, one second. Yes, I have used couple of softwares here. The software that have given me the best result is Disopred. DISOPRED.
Okay. There is another question that what would be the entropy of these intrinsically disordered proteins from Aditi Konad?
That is a very good question. Yeah. Uh, I think I have missed it out. Okay. Uh, as I was explaining this figure, I missed this part. This protein, the part is if a protein is intrinsically disordered, and if it stays inside the cell, and if something stayed inside the cell as a chain, if the entropy of the cell should have increased, right? Because it is staying as a chain, it is taking more space than the normal folded proteins. But the eventual fact is, these proteins are also saving the binding affinities because they are playing they have a quick on, quick off binding effects. Like they can bind to some protein and they can minimize the energy of binding. Henceforth, the entire energy barrier will decrease while they are functioning inside the cell. And since the regulation of these proteins are quite high, so the entropy of the cell will never increase like that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, these were the questions. No more questions
There
there.
is this Aditi Konar question. Has this been taken?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine, fine. Okay, Kaustav, that was very short and crisp. I wanted to hear some
Ma'am,
more about it,
sorry to
but you
interrupt.
finished it quite early. You had just entered into the signaling part, and I think you didn't go much into details about the signaling part. I had already buckled up to hear that. Anyway,
Ma'am, there is
uh,
one more question actually.
oh, there's one more question in the chat
Yes,
box.
yes. From Shaunak Shah, he has asked that is it possible to express TDPs only during stress but not during homeostasis?
Not really. You can express these type of proteins are expressed at any time at any time inside the cell. So I don't think that a T cell will do work only in space. So there are a lot of work that has been done. Like the protein of my interest here is this part. This protein do express in normal cells. The T cell needs to develop. The T cell need to work a lot. Other than those, only the proliferation and secretion of this IL, these interleukins. So these functions are eventually done by this. And yes, these proteins do express in normal conditions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Over to
And
you, ma'am.
And ma'am, answering you, yes, this is some part that I have studied from you only. Yeah, this, I am specifically here. I was explaining I didn't went into the signaling details because I just wanted to keep it to the basics because this is a emerging field, and I think this they have a future in this field.
Yeah, but later on someday, why don't you do a bit of your work? I'm just a work exposure talk on for my PG students.
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
this was you did it in a generalized one, but
Yeah.
something to do with your work and specifically into this immunological signaling part, because it
Okay.
has become all immune system, as you know, has become all the important given this COVID scenario. So it's the immune system that is now ruling.
Yes.
Okay, I think so. There's one another question that has come up in the chat box by Omolendu. He has asked, what is the implication of IDPs in the treatment of cancer?
Actually, it doesn't have the implication. It causes cancer. It is
Yeah,
one of the cause because they make if the regulation of making these proteins are disrupted, the more and more this kind of proteins are being made, they will come they will eventually aggregate, and eventually this kind of aggregation leads to cancer because the cell will outgrow.
No, actually, I got your point. What I wanted to ask is that what will be the implications of addressing that these IDPs is not accumulated within the cells? So, is there any kind of work going on? Because this question is very near to my heart because I'm with in the pharma profession as for now.
Okay.
So, just for my curiosity, I'm asking.
Can you repeat once more? I didn't get one thing.
Uh, Actually, what I was asking is that, as you're told that these IDPs are the main, is one of the reasons that of cancer, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So what I was asking is that, is there any kind of work going on currently to address that these IDPs are not being accumulated within the cells, or means of like any drugs or any kind of therapy work is going on so that these
Yeah.
expressions of these IDPs are not being
Yeah.
expressed within some cancer
I have.
cells? Or
Yes, I can answer you in two ways. Firstly, there are some works going on in MRC, like I said, in Madan Babu's lab. They are looking into how these proteins are regulated specifically, because regulation of this kind of proteins are highly essential. And secondly, the second part, as I have seen very in Papu lab, and in that lab, I have seen that they are working more on this phase transition where they can just uh, they can isolate this kind of scaffold proteins than that of the structured protein. So this kind of works are going on, and eventually a recent paper have came up from their lab on this phase transition thing. You can look into it once.
okay, fine. Thanks a lot.
Welcome.
So, Kostav, thank you. And if this, I mean to say, this situation continues, can we have another talk around September, October regarding hardcore immunology? I love that. And we'll make it for our PG students, and if anybody else is interested. So you'll be able to understand your target audience, and then accordingly you can deliver.
Okay, ma'am.
So I'll be looking forward to that. And thank you, Kostav, so much for sparing some time for my students and making this happen. So thank you again. That was a beautiful. And did you do this animation all by yourself, or you used? I mean to say, you used a software, I guess.
Which one?
This signaling one, I like that very much.
No, I made it.
You made it. Eh? It was excellently done. Very well worked out. So thank you again, Kostav. So right now, I think so. In fact, the people who joined are still sitting here. If they can get anything else from you, so nobody's leaving out. So actually, this is something which finished quite fast. When you are entering into the subject, then suddenly you said, okay. And so anyway, thank you so much. So we'll be meeting again around October, November with a more detailed immunological aspect, I guess.
Sure.
So then signing out today, okay, Kaustubh?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks for
take care.
thanks to the audience. Thanks a lot.
Nahi ho gaya. Okay. And there is no more in the chat box, so fine. So it's okay. Signing off then, Kaustubh. Okay, bye. Take care, all of you. Stay safe. You are in Kalyani now?
Yes, ma'am. I'm in industry.
In the institute. Fine. Take care and stay safe. Okay.